There was this pilot study going on inside the company I was working at, and they wanted 5 volunteers to try on a continuous glucose monitor. I don't have diabetes. Nobody in my family has diabetes, but I raised my hand because something inside me was telling me this is going to teach me a lot.
Jessie Inchauspé,
the glucose goddess,
is a French biochemist and author
whose science-backed glucose hacks have helped over 3 million people.
And she's on a mission to turn science into easy tips for improving your physical and mental health.
Having these spikes and these drops all day is the activation of the craving center in your brain. And it tells you, Radhi, find a cookie. Find a cookie.
Yeah, I have that voice in my head.
We can reduce the glucose spike of that meal by up to 75%.
Insane.
Without changing the meal. We eat the same quantity, the same foods, just the order can have a huge impact on our glucose levels. So the correct order to eat your food in during a meal is...
I'm Radhi Devlukia, and on my podcast, A Really Good Cry, we embrace the real, the messy, and the beautiful, providing a space for raw, unfiltered conversations that celebrate vulnerability and allow you to tune in to learn, connect, and find comfort together.
You have your little cards. I'm so cute.
Of course I do, because there is so much to speak to you about. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I don't think you realize how obsessed I am with you, and I need to tone it down during this podcast because it may scare you.
No, it's fine.
But I am so obsessed, and my family is now so obsessed. So I literally read your book, with both books, in 2 days.
Really?
Over the weekend, and I could not put it down. I just felt like it had opened up a whole new world to eating and living and just having a healthier body and mind. And it was just incredible. So my sister bought the book. My dad bought the book. My sister binge read your book in a day, as I did. And suddenly her children, my dad, my whole family are following the Glucose Goddess method. So,
girl, thank you.
They are part of the Glucose Revolution, which, by the way, everyone, that is the name of your... This is
first
the
book.
First book.
Yeah,
and the second book is the Glucose Goddess Method. And it's no other than Jessie, and tell me how you pronounce your last name before I wish it.
Inchauspé.
That's so beautiful.
Well, the French way
Jessie
is
Inchauspé.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it, girl.
Well, first of all, I just want to ask you, because I already know about your entire life, but I feel like the audience may not. So I feel like I have to allow you to share your story, because it's incredible and I want the world to know it. So please, could you tell me, how did you come to create these incredible books?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I know, you have your book out now, but it's kind of weird when you look at a book and you realize all the steps that you had to take to actually get to this. It's wild. So the whole thing started at the beginning when I was 19.
Okay.
Big accident, break my back. Your podcast is called A Really Good Cry. Lots of crying. Terrible surgery, lots of physical pain, lots of mental health issues afterwards. And so I was 19, Radhi, and I just felt like, wow, I'm completely broken.
Yeah.
My soul is completely broken. So I had to figure out how to feel better. I was living in London at the time. I was studying mathematics, and everything was in shambles. So, I put on my big girl pants and I was like, okay, I feel absolutely horrendous, but let me try and figure out how to feel better. That brought me to study biochemistry in grad school to understand how the inside of our body works. It was interesting. I didn't find no breakthroughs happened that allowed me to feel better. And then I went on to work in genetics in Silicon Valley for 5 years. Super interesting, but not helpful at all when it comes to mental health. I was like, your DNA doesn't tell you anything about what you need to be doing to feel better. And then while I was there, and I really believe in, the universe helping us and guiding us, there was this pilot study going on inside the company I was working at. And they wanted 5 volunteers to try on a continuous glucose monitor. I don't have diabetes. Nobody in my family has diabetes. But I raised my hand, because something inside me was telling me this is going to teach me a lot.
Yeah.
And what I found was fascinating. I found that the days where my glucose levels were like a roller coaster, spike, drop, spike, drop, spike, drop, my mental health was worse. And the days where my glucose levels were nice and steady, I felt better. And this may sound obvious, but to me, 8 years after this surgery, 8 years into horrible mental health issues, I was like, wait a second, did I find something that could influence my mental health? Did I just start to understand that my food could impact how I felt? And so that opened, really wide, these massive gates into the world of blood sugar. And it became my passion. I was able to start my healing process through the science that I discovered. And then it became so clear that this information was too important not to share. So I started on Instagram where I talked about glucose levels. And here we are 5 years later.
Wow.
And now I'm really happy to be able to share the science with the world because whoever you are, this is so helpful to your health.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And I would say, you said it's not obvious. It seems like something that's obvious, but I would say it's not obvious.
You don't think so?
The majority of the people in the world, I think, unless we're taught it from a really young age, that the food that we are eating becomes us, and it becomes our mind, and it becomes our brain, and it becomes our heart, and it becomes all of these parts of our bodies, including how we feel emotionally, how we feel mentally, how we feel every single day. It's not broken down to us like that. And I studied nutrition and dietetics. I was a clinical dietitian for a few years, and I have to say the same thing where it's so different looking at it and reading it as you would in a textbook.
Yeah.
But what's beautiful about what you've done is you've been through something, you've learned something, and then you've put it into practice. Yeah. And so I think it's really different being someone who knows research, but has lived research and been research.
Oh yeah. It's like everybody can give you all this amazing advice in your life, but until you go through it, you're not going to be able to really integrate it. No. And I know you get it because I remember in the introduction of your book, you talk about this, how our food becomes us, our food, powers us. Our body is our food. It's amazing. Exactly. And the brain is the same situation. What you eat impacts your cravings, your hunger, your energy, the speed of the signals between your neurons, how much brain fog you feel, your mental health. It's fascinating.
It is. And, I also don't think people have, there may be lots of people out there who don't even know what glucose is or will connect it to diabetes, because that's how I was until I studied nutrition. Glucose was linked to my grandma who has diabetes, or, my uncle who has diabetes. It wasn't something that I would ever have to think about in my life. And so would you mind explaining what glucose is and how it is actually something that impacts us every single day from the moment we eat to how it affects our body?
Yes, I love this question. So glucose is your body's favorite source of energy. So right now, if you're listening to us, dear listeners, the cells in your brain are burning glucose to make sense of what you're hearing, okay? Yeah. If everybody just squeezes their right hand right now and makes a fist, the cells in your hand muscles are using glucose to contract, right? And this goes for your brain, for your liver, for your toe cells, for your ovaries, for your heart, everything. Yeah. Your body is burning glucose all the time. And the main way that we give this incredibly important glucose to our bodies is by eating foods, by eating two types of foods. Starches, so that's bread, rice, oats, pasta, potatoes, and sweet foods. So anything that tastes sweet, from your amazing chocolate dessert to an apple, okay? And now you might think, okay, well, I want lots of energy, so I should give my body lots of glucose, lots of starches and sugars, right? And actually, this is where the logic breaks down. I love to take the example of a plant, and you have some really cute plants in your studio here. And as a plant owner, you know that your plant needs some water to live. But if by big mistake you give your plant too much water, it drowns, it dies. And the human body is the same. Some glucose, amazing, bring it on, fantastic. Too much glucose and problems start happening. And during a meal, when you give too much glucose to your body experiences what's called a glucose spike. So a rapid increase in your glucose levels in your blood. And this comes with consequences: inflammation, mitochondrial fatigue, you are tired, brain fog, the activation of the craving center in your brain, your hunger hormones become completely unbalanced, you might get some skin issues, long-term you might get fertility problems, type 2 diabetes, etc. So my whole work has been to teach people how to avoid these spikes, but without giving up the chocolate dessert that you're going to make for me after this episode.
Yeah.
We have it on camera.
Yes. I am making you some chocolate desserts. But we're going to do some things before that.
Or the polenta bake that I saw that I really want to try. So anytime we eat carbs, carbs are amazing. They're delicious. They're cheap. They're cultural. Really, I don't want to give them up. Like, there's no way.
No, I grew up, after reading your book and also after starting my fitness journey and trying to live a healthier lifestyle, I grew up in an Indian house and it was filled with amazing food. I grew up vegetarian and there was lentils and beans and pulse. There was always, a lentil or a pulse on my dish. There was always that. And that was always our way of getting protein in our diet. That was probably the only source that we really had. But as I grew up and I started learning about the different components of foods, I realized that, that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask you is when you're thinking about a lentil or a bean, what is the makeup and the breakup of, it is obviously still carbohydrates, but it's also proteins.
Yes, it's a tough one because lentils, pulses, they're actually 30% fiber, 30% protein, 30% carbs, right?
Okay.
So listen, I put them actually in the vegetable category. I would actually eat my lentils first during a meal. We can get to that hack, but they're quite rich in fiber.
Okay.
They're quite amazing and they do contain carbs, but because they have so much fiber and protein in there, that's going to slow down the breakdown of the carbs.
That makes all of us Indians very happy. Like very happy, trust me. I've been waiting to ask you that question.
Perfect.
But I want to ask you, so on a day-to-day basis, someone's walking about and they're living their life. I know you mentioned tiredness and you mentioned a few other symptoms, but what are the main symptoms that a person should be looking out for? Because, we may feel tired because we haven't had enough sleep. Yeah. We may feel a bit lethargic because we're on the first day of our period. Like there's so many different reasons for us feeling certain symptoms, but on a grander scale, what are the symptoms that someone's walking around saying, you know what, I think I need to see what my glucose levels are doing because I'm feeling this, this, and this?
I would say the most common symptoms are craving something sweet throughout the day. So it's 10 a.m. and you really want a pastry, or it's 4 p.m. and you're like, I need a cookie or a chocolate bar, or it's 11 p.m. and that pot of ice cream in the back of your freezer, it's calling your name. Yeah. So those are sugar cravings, right? And very often the symptom of having these spikes and these drops all day is the activation of the craving center in your brain. And it tells you, Radhi, find a cookie. Find a cookie.
I have that all the time. I'm like, I have that voice in my head.
Totally. So that's one of the most common ones. And then I would say the fatigue. So of course, sleep is a factor. Maybe your kid woke you up in the middle of the night, of course. But nonetheless, if you feel like your body is just not producing the energy that it should be, so going to the grocery store is exhausting, picking up your kids from school is exhausting. You wake up, you're exhausted. You don't have energy to really go after any dreams. That could be because your little mitochondria, the factories inside of your cells, are tired. And why do they become tired? Because of glucose spikes. What's weird about mitochondria, and all this is so fascinating because there's always a nuance there. Your mitochondria, they want glucose. That's what they burn to create energy for your body. But if you give them too much, they actually go on strike. They they're like, too much information, cannot deal, need to go nap. They're like, too much glucose, You're
overworking me. I'm going on holiday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that we keep eating carbs, but our mitochondria are not working. So we're exhausted. And we're like, but I'm giving my body all this energy. Why do I feel so tired? So the cravings and the tiredness are the first symptoms to usually dissipate once you start applying the hacks.
I can totally relate to that. And I think we're so used to thinking of comfort food. Like whenever I'm really hungry from a young age, I've had this desire to go towards bread. Like bread has always been and I would think, okay, I'm just going to have a quick piece of bread and I'm going to feel great and I'm going to feel fine. And sometimes I'd have it with nothing on it, just the piece of bread because bread is that good.
It's so good.
But I would always suffer with these ups and downs of, okay, so I'd eat the bread and I'd feel really great for like an hour and then I'd feel really hungry straight away. So then I'd have to keep eating, but I keep fueling myself just on carbohydrates.
And you're on a big glucose roller coaster.
And I was never satiated either. I was always still hungry, like over and over again. I know you speak about that in your book where it's almost like this vicious cycle that you go on.
So if you're somebody who needs to snack every 2 hours, that's a sign that you're on a glucose roller coaster.
Yes.
So you eat carbs, naked carbs. We can get to that in a sec, like
carbs,
the bread, you spike because bread turns into glucose. So glucose spike, then crash 90 minutes later. Craving center activate, hunger hormones all over the place. You're hungry again. So you look for carbs again, and the cycle continues. And it gets even worse if you're somebody who craves sweet foods because the sweet taste actually releases dopamine in your brain. And dopamine is the pleasure hormone. It makes you literally feel better. When you're after a breakup, you reach for the chocolate ice cream.
Yeah.
You know why? Because it's dopamine. It's a pot of dopamine because you feel like crap.
Yes.
So we're always craving for this dopamine hit from sweet foods because a lot of us just don't feel that good throughout the day. The problem is, bam, other glucose spike and bam, you crash again and the cycle continues.
I always wonder whether if as children, because obviously we must learn that pattern from a young age, right? Where if we weren't having those things from a young age and we were following some of the rules that you're speaking
Yeah.
about in your book. Like my sister's now practicing it with her children, by the way.
Nice.
And what's beautiful is she's always been really conscious about how she feeds her children. And I've noticed, for example, with them, they get really excited about a plate of crudités. Like they'll get really
That's
excited
amazing.
about celery and cucumbers and cherry tomatoes. And they're so happy with that. And that is their excitement. And can I have that with some hummus or, whatever? They'll be really happy about that. But I think as soon as you end up introducing sugar, for some reason, it's like this extreme pull that we have towards it. And once you've had it, you just can't forget it.
It's a very strong drug. And it's because that wiring of sweet taste to dopamine, that's been there for hundreds of thousands of years, because evolutionarily it made sense. Because back in the day, hunter-gatherer days, if we found all of a sudden a bunch of juicy oranges, well, we should eat those as quickly as we could to store the energy, right? Because something sweet cannot be bad for you. Nothing is poisonous and sweet. And sweet taste usually, tells you there's going to be a lot of calories in here. So back in the day, it made a lot of sense for us to gorge on sweet stuff whenever we could find them twice a year.
Wow.
But today, well, it's not good for us anymore because sweet foods are everywhere and they're cheap and they're at the corner store, at the gas station, at school. It's like, whew.
And they're in all the things that you don't even realize. That's the problem. And I want to go on to that in a bit. But I really want everyone to know about your hacks, because those hacks, what I love by everyone, you just read the book because you're going to be obsessed. But what I love about it is they're so simple. Me and my sister were talking about that yesterday. She was like, I just love it because I didn't have to get anything. I already had the things I needed in my house. It wasn't even that I had to change what I was eating. I just had to figure out a few bits here and there. I feel so much better.
And it's free,
Yes, exactly.
And it's so easy.
I want to go through hack by hack because I think they're just phenomenal. So the first one I want to talk about is the order of the foods.
Yes.
So walk us through it.
Okay.
How should we be eating our foods?
Okay, so there's this amazing study that shows us that if we eat the elements of our meal in a specific order, we can reduce the glucose spike of that meal by up to 75%.
Insane.
Without changing the meal.
Wow.
Like we eat the same quantity, the same foods, just the order can have a huge impact on our glucose levels. So the correct order to eat your food in during a meal for your glucose levels is veggies first, then proteins and fats, then starches and sugars. So why this order? Well, because veggies first, veggies contain fiber. Fiber, she's like my superwoman. Like I love her. She's just the bomb. So fiber, when we eat some at the beginning of a meal, she's got time to go and coat our upper intestine and make like a protective shield, a sort of gooey, protective, sexy mesh. We love it. And that mesh then slows down how quickly glucose molecules will make their way from your stomach to your intestine and to your bloodstream. So any starches or sugars during the rest of the meal, like some pasta and some cookies, they're not going to create as big of a spike. You still eat them, but there'll be less impact on your health, less creation of a cravings cycle, less inflammation, etc. The proteins and fats second is also because proteins and fats, when we eat them before carbs, are going to slow down digestion. So you'll feel fuller for longer. And then the carbs at the end, because you've prepared, you've coated with the fibrous mesh, there's stuff in your belly. And when you eat the carbs, they're going to arrive more slowly.
Only you can make fiber sound so sexy. And can I just say, don't you all want Jessie to do some sort of sleep meditation with her voice? Because I could fall asleep to your voice. You could just talk about fiber.
Yeah.
And I'd be nodding off. Like,
it's amazing.
Yeah?
Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Okay, you have to.
Okay.
That's going to be your next project, okay? So question on that. What if you are doing a one-pot meal? Because, all of us, we're cooking fast. Everyone wants a 30-minute meal. They want all of their goodness in one pot, less dishes. What do we do with that? How does that work?
Well, in that case, I would recommend going to hack number 2, which is having a vegetable starter. So, this order of eating, that's as we were talking about earlier, that's the scientific theory. It's quite strict, right? But how do we apply this to our lives in an easy way? Well, I recommend actually focusing just on the veggies first part, because that's where most of the power lies. And that's much easier. So if you're having a one-pot dish, if you're having a sandwich, whatever, have your meal. But before you eat it, have a vegetable starter. Okay. And listen, it can be 5 cherry tomatoes.
Yeah,
it can be
that.
2 baby carrots.
Yeah.
Okay. It can be 1 head of broccoli that's been in your fridge for 3 days, is in the back and is really cold. It doesn't matter.
A crudité platter.
Yes.
And you also have lots of wonderful recipes in your book.
Yes.
And they're like 5, maybe max 10 ingredient recipes. That's including a dressing.
Yes.
And there's so many different options that you present, from raw veggies to having, you know, a really nice broccoli that's grilled with some sort of beautiful miso dressing on
Tahini
top.
stuff, yeah. And I'm super lazy. I'm just the laziest cook in the whole world. That's why I'm really excited you're going to cook for me. Because like, I mean, if I could not cook and have everything prepared, I would love that. But so my recipes are 6 ingredients or less, and they take 5 to 10 minutes because again, like that's just me.
Yeah.
I don't have time. I want quick, easy
Totally.
recipes to do the hacks. So that's hack number 2. That's the veggies first hack.
And when you do eat like a 1-pot meal, for example, is it that your body will just break down carbohydrates first because that's its preference, and then it will break everything else down? Like if you are having something which has protein, fats, carbohydrates, like everything together, will is it still better for you than if you're having, you know, just a straight carbohydrate, because you've still got those fats and that protein together?
Absolutely. So it's kind of a spectrum. Let's say you have a meal that's like spaghetti and meat and tomatoes, right? The worst thing to do for your glucose levels would be to eat the spaghetti first and then the meat and the tomatoes. A better option would be to mix everything together. And an even better option would be the veggies first. You see what I mean?
And does it matter whether the vegetables are cooked or
grilled
raw?
or no? The only thing you want to avoid is, that's going to be less beneficial, is making a very, very runny soup. So blitzing like broccoli into oblivion, because when you do that, you're actually pulverizing the fiber particles.
And cooking the vegetables doesn't ruin the fiber?
No,
oh, great.
It does not.
Okay, good to know.
And pulverizing them is fine, like the fiber's still there, but it's going to be a bit less effective.
Okay.
However, it is better to have a broccoli soup than no veggie starter at all. It's all relative.
Yeah. The next one is my favorite: your naked carbs, or dressing your carbs. That I loved hearing that one. Tell me about that.
Okay.
Tell me about how you dress your carbs.
Okay, so carbs, as I explained, are starches or sugars. And the worst thing you can do for your glucose levels is to eat them naked, to eat them on their own. So for example, a cookie on its own or a plate of pasta on its own. Why? Because if you're eating just pure carbs, then the glucose molecules are going to go super quickly, be digested, nothing holding them back, yada, yada. They get into your bloodstream super fast. And then that's a glucose spike. What you want to do is put some clothing on the carbs. And clothing is protein, fat, or fiber.
Make them fancy.
Exactly.
All 3.
Make a little outfit for them. You know? And so, for example, a cookie with some nuts, or a cookie with a yogurt, and pasta with some chicken, or pasta with some spinach. You know, add some stuff, add some other molecules around it to slow down how quickly that glucose is arriving into your blood.
Is one better than another, doing it with protein or with fats, or a bit of both is always better?
That's such a good question. Nobody's ever asked me that. I think the best one to do is the one that you like the most.
Oh, I like that answer. That's a good answer.
So that you actually do it.
Yeah. You know? Look, dress your carbs, make them look really fancy.
Really fancy.
And you can change their clothes every single day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Make a little fashion show.
Make it really fun.
Yeah. Outfit of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Outfit of the day. You have to do that with your carbs.
Okay, well.
That needs to be another. See, we're just giving you so many ideas of your next projects, but your next social media series.
You can be my agent, right?
Okay, perfect. Has to be dressing your carbs. Outfit of the day.
So good.
The exercising after your meal. So explain that, and I have a wonderful question about it.
Okay, well, you know how I said that every cell in your body uses glucose for energy? Yeah. The more you contract your muscles, the more they need glucose. And so we can use this to our advantage. This hack is, after you eat, move for 10 minutes. Doesn't have to be going to the gym. You don't have to run a marathon. You can literally clean your kitchen. That counts. You can dance in your living room. You can go for a walk. You can do some calf raises at your desk.
One thing I did yesterday after, I was like, I do not want to work out after I've eaten. And you know what I did? I pretended like I was jump roping while watching a show.
Nice.
But you were in my mind, and that's why I did it. Yeah.
Thank you. In front of the TV, I love doing squats, or like I grab a water bottle, bicep curls with a big bottle of olive oil. It's good. It's great. Yeah,
and it's so nice that it's so simple. That's all you have to do.
And so when you do that, your muscles are going to soak up some of the glucose from your meal instead of letting it create a glucose spike in your bloodstream.
And so do carbohydrates and the glucose molecules also fuel our muscles?
Yes, absolutely. They do.
And so would you recommend, you know, I've always heard work out on an empty stomach. Like have your workout in the morning on an empty stomach. It's the most efficient for your body, you know, work out fasted. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Listen, I'm not so sure about the scientific evidence around that. I think for me, it's really hard to work out fasted. I think for
Yeah.
women and for our bodies, it's important to be properly fueling, especially if you're going to do something a bit difficult, because otherwise it can be kind of a stressor.
Yes.
So I always have some food in the morning before working out. And of course, listen, in the grand scheme of things, working out anytime
Of course.
is the best thing to
Yeah.
do. But for your glucose levels, I don't know. I think it's kind of more advantageous to take advantage of this concept to reduce the spike of a meal.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I would do that.
I've heard sometimes where if you're, even with protein shakes and taking protein supplements, doing it within a couple of hours after.
Yeah. So, people used to think that that window was very short, and it's more like a barn door. Like even if you have protein 6 hours later, it's still going to go and replenish your muscles.
Okay. Well, all the muscle heads out there, just know you've got longer to have your protein.
I'm sure you have a lot of listeners who are big muscle
Oh,
heads.
yeah, okay. All of them just want a really good cry. They're just secretly listening to this crying in the corner. Vinegar. Now, this is the next one. The apple cider vinegar.
Any vinegar.
Any vinegar. Okay, any vinegar at all. Please tell us about the vinegar hack. I've been doing it. I felt great, honestly.
Amazing.
I do it before my biggest carbohydrate meal,
Nice.
usually in the afternoon. And I really like the taste of it, actually. I really enjoy drinking apple cider vinegar.
Fantastic.
And yeah, please tell us the studies behind it and what it does to our body.
Okay. And I was quite surprised when I learned all this. I was like, really? There's science behind vinegar. So the studies show us that vinegar contain a molecule called acetic acid. Super cool molecule. And if you have some before eating a meal, and we're talking 1 tablespoon in a big glass of water, any kind of vinegar, it can be apple cider, white wine vinegar, red wine vinegar, whatever, cherry vinegar, whatever you want. The acetic acid is going to slow down how quickly the carbs are turning into glucose molecules in your stomach. And again, we get back to this idea of slowing down the arrival of the glucose into your blood. So I love doing this, once a day when I'm going to have, as you said, the meal with the most carbs, or before I have a birthday cake or whatever. And this should be used as a complement to the other hacks. And one way I love merging the vinegar hack is with the veggie starter hack.
Yes.
So I will make a vinegar dressing on my veggie starter.
Which is perfect because you get 2 in 1.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was talking to my sister about it again yesterday, and I was like, so basically every time I want to eat cake, I will just have vinegar before I eat the cake, and it equals it out. Nothing's going to happen to me.
Exactly. Well, it doesn't equal it out,
No,
but
totally.
it really helps.
We just, we have glucose goddess banter.
Aww.
Yeah. I really appreciate all those hacks. And the thing is, what I also think is, you don't have to start with all of them at once, right? Like you can slowly bring each one in. I think you talk about that in your book as well, where week 1, just start with one of them. Week 2, add in another one. Week 3, add in another one. And I think that helps you create sustainable changes in your life, where then it becomes your lifestyle and it doesn't become, oh my gosh, this is a 30-day thing I'm going to do. No, it's just, this is how I'm going to incorporate new wonderful habits into my life that become part of my life easily.
That's the point. We don't want more crash diets. We don't want more of these fads.
We don't.
To me, the hacks, they're almost like at the same level as brush your teeth,
They really are.
drink water, wear sunscreen,
Yeah.
have a savory breakfast, have veggies at the beginning of your meal. That's how it feels to me.
Yes.
These feel like just lifelong principles. And if you don't do them for a day, a week, a month, a year, who cares? Just pick them up whenever you feel like it. I think it's super key.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the last one is savory breakfast.
Oh yeah, it's an important one.
Yeah, it is an important one because I do think a lot of people, especially I find in the US, prioritize the pastries and donuts, and it's a big thing. Cereal.
Yeah.
We all grew up eating cereals.
What did you grow up eating for breakfast?
I grew up eating, honestly, I have the most amazing mum who used to just make us green juices and carrot juice in the morning, and like she would just make sure we had really yummy, fresh, healthy food throughout our life. And I just am so grateful for that growing up. But I, as a child, as most teenagers do, no, Mum, I want cereal. And I would throw out the green juice into the plant, and she didn't know. And I didn't appreciate it at the time. So I would want all the sugary cereals, or I would want a toast with jam on it, all the sweet things. I don't think I ever even wanted a savory breakfast.
The dopamine, you wanted that dopamine.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Being a kid and a teenager sucks.
Yeah.
So,
No, I don't want my supplements and I don't want my green juice. The plant can have it. But the savory breakfast one is great because when I, just to give some context, I swapped to a savory breakfast. But before, what I was doing was having my protein shake, but I was doing a lot of fruit in there. And I was doing fruit and like cocoa powder. But what I would say is, because I was putting quite a lot of fruit in there, I was finding myself getting 2 hours in, and I was in my work day, and I was feeling so almost like a little bit sick and also so energyless. Like I felt drained, and I thought, I've just had an amazing workout. I've had my protein. I've had like, something that I thought was, I should feel great, but I'm just not. But I kept doing it because I thought, you know what? This is what people have told me. I have to listen. Maybe it's just my body. And then what I did was I switched around. So I was having what you recommended. I was having scrambled tofu on toast with some avocado and some like hemp seeds. And then maybe half an hour later, I'd have my protein shake with the same way. And I have felt amazing. I'm satiated till lunchtime.
Amazing.
And I feel so good. And so just that swap of changing that around. And I know you say you can have the smoothies with protein, but for me, I was maybe putting in too much fruit. And even fruit was giving me that glucose spike and making me feel really lethargic afterwards.
What kind of fruit do you put into it?
At that time, I was putting in, strawberries, pineapples.
Oh, yeah, that's very sweet.
It was sweet. But then I was like, but it's a protein shake and I'm really healthy. And I'm putting in avocado. But, there was a limit of how much fruit I could put into there.
And so by adding, the scrambled tofu and the avocado and the bread, what you're doing is you're really giving your body this savory start.
Yes.
With protein and healthy fats, and not just a quick gulp of sugars. And this hack is incredibly important. Yeah. You cannot have steady glucose levels if you're having something sweet in the morning. So I always recommend people switch to having a savory breakfast built around protein, healthy fats. And you can also, if you want, add some starch, add some bread, add some oats on the side. But importantly, avoid having anything sweet except whole fruit for taste if you want. Yeah. So no cereal, granola, fruit juice, honey, etc. Really try to minimize that. And if you love that sweet food, have it for dessert after your lunch or your dinner.
Yes.
Right? Just not in the morning, because in the morning, your system is completely empty. Exactly. So if you give it too much sugar, big glucose spike, and then exactly as you were describing.
It sets you off in the wrong way.
2 hours later, you feel awful. You're like, oh my God. And then you need to pick me up, and maybe it's a coffee, maybe it's a Red Bull, maybe it's more sugar. And the whole day is kind of messed up.
Ruined. Yeah, I can really relate to that. Yeah. So if you were having, you said building your meals around protein. So obviously I'm vegan, and I have been for maybe 10 years now. And I know you mentioned you had gone vegan for a little bit in your life. Yeah. But I wanted to know, because for I think a lot of the people who listen to this podcast also are maybe plant-based. And what would you recommend building? Obviously, there's tofu and there is now chickpeas and legumes. Powder. Can we use legumes as our protein starter, creating a meal around them?
The savory breakfast? Yeah, you can. Absolutely. I think if you're vegan, you have to be super good about, you need to supplement with omega-3s. It takes a lot of work. You need to supplement with omega-3s, otherwise your brain is going to fall apart. Yeah. It's really important. You need to make sure you're getting that good stuff, And if you're somebody who wants to be plant-based and not eat, dead animals, which I understand, maybe bring in some eggs or some dairy, from pasture-raised places. That eggs are nature's multivitamin. So good for you.
Interesting.
So, but yes, you can build it around legumes. You can build it around protein powder from plant sources. Absolutely. You just have to be really aware.
You have to be more switched on.
It's it's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been trying.
Yeah, but that's what you do, and you're really good at it because you spend so much time learning about your body and cooking. So when I was vegan, I only ate Oreos and pasta.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm vegan, guys. I'm so healthy. And I got super depressed. My skin was terrible. And then I went keto. And I was just eating pounds and pounds and pounds of cheese all day. And I was like, I'm keto. I'm so healthy. But I gained 10 pounds. I was like, I don't know what's happening. So to me, these extreme diets never worked. It's not for me. I want a balanced life. I want to make sure I'm giving my body everything that it needs. And so for me, this approach of eating a bit of everything, I never eat red meat. I just don't want it, but I eat so many eggs. I eat dairy, I eat cheese. I'll have some chicken once in a while. And that works for me.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about these hacks is that they can be applied to any kind of diet and lifestyle.
Totally.
And in my books, I have examples, whether you're vegan or you're full keto, paleo, whatever.
I appreciated that. You have such a range in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do find that. And I think there's just different things that work for different bodies. We're all such different bodies. And
totally.
I know you write about that in your book as well, how don't be surprised if you don't have the same, it will help everybody, but it will have a different reaction on everybody.
Exactly.
Like your blood glucose levels may start at a different level to your friends, and it may spike to a different level. But the point is, all of these hacks will help bring it down to some degree.
Girl, I'm impressed with you. You're really understood everything, because that's a key concept that most people don't really grasp. So if you and I both ate your polenta bake and we were both wearing a glucose monitor, our spikes would look different.
Yes.
But from that, you can't actually draw any conclusions. But if we both had a veggie starter before the polenta bake, both of our spikes would be smaller.
Yes.
And that's what's important. And also all the hacks that I shared, they're based on clinical trials done at scale that show that this stuff actually holds up in a large population. I'm not just slapping a glucose monitor on and making a test and saying, oh, this is a generalized truth. You know, that's not what I'm doing. I'm just illustrating the studies with my data.
Yeah. And I agree with that. Even with, living a plant-based diet, I think you really have to figure out what works for you. Because for me, touch wood, and I don't like saying this too often, but I've had such great response from my body to being plant-based. Like, I feel like I have thrived off it, and my results every time I go to get blood tests, I'm like, is there something wrong? Have I done anything? Like, what are my macronutrients? Like, what are my everything has always been so balanced. And I think it is because you have to make, if you're choosing to do these specific types of, a specific lifestyle, you have to learn how to do it to make your body thrive, right?
Yeah, not Oreos and pasta.
Like not Oreos and pasta. But you always start there, though. Who doesn't start with Oreos and pasta when you're vegan? But everything in life takes conscious effort. And with what you've done, it's conscious effort. Like, you're not going to be able to just look in your fridge and just grab something. You have to also plan for it. And I think that's really important, because we all live slightly an unconscious life where we live through it day to day monotonously, not thinking about our day-to-day actions or what we're picking up and putting into our body and into our mouth. And so these are easy hacks, but at the same time, I will say they are conscious hacks, and they are conscious things you have to adapt your lifestyle to do and to incorporate in order for you to notice, this is what I'm fueling my body with, this is what I'm putting into my body, and this is how it's affecting me. And I think the blood glucose monitor is a great way to understand your physical body. And do you recommend it to anyone and everyone to have?
No, I think you can get so many benefits from just applying my hacks, even without wearing one, because you'll be able to feel your body change, your cravings dissipate, your brain fog going away, your energy levels improving. Listen, if you want to wear one, fantastic. Please read my book before, because they can be very confusing to interpret, but you don't need one. If it calls your name, and for me, it changed my life completely, but now I've done all the work for you, so you don't actually really need to wear one to see it all, but it can be super motivating. So if it calls you yes, I would never recommend it to everybody. I don't think that's the point.
No. And I think tuning into your body without even needing a physical device is such a beautiful process, because you can start by simply writing a journal of these are the things that I've incorporated. And this is how I feel today. This is how I feel the next day. I've eaten this. This is how I feel.
And in the Glucose Goddess Method, my second book, at the beginning, I have this workbook. So it's a 4-week method. And you can write, how were my cravings? How was my energy? What did I notice? And it's super cool, because you become connected.
Exactly.
And you realize symptoms are messages from your body. They're not stuff to suppress, right?
As soon as I get a physical symptom, like even if I get a spot on my face, or if I get some sort of pain in my back, or whatever I'm feeling physically, it's become such an indication of there is something happening internally that I'm not addressing.
Yes.
And then I have to break it down. Is it physical? Is it emotional? Is it mental? Is it something that I am doing wrong in lifting things or whatever? But it's making me so aware that something is happening. And I think, the things that we actually experience on surface level are the last scream of our body saying, hey, I need you to listen to me. And I know the only way you're going to listen to me is if I put a big spot on your face right now, because otherwise I've been screaming at you for so long and you have not been listening. And so anytime you notice, our physical body pain is linked to our emotions, our skin is linked to the nutrients that we're eating, like everything is so interlinked. And as soon as we disconnect from that, that's when we start noticing these physical ailments that happen in our body.
I completely agree.
I thank you for those hacks.
You're welcome,
Thank you
babe.
for changing all of our lives.
Oh, you're welcome.
I wanted to ask you about food labels, because unfortunately, our world has become just so, supermarkets are really difficult to navigate, because not only do you have to figure out all the things that are written at the back of the label, all the ingredients list where sometimes you don't even know what the words are. On top of that, you have the front labels where it says gluten-free,
Good for you.
superfood,
Yeah.
whole grain,
Vegan Oreos.
yeah, vegan Oreos, healthier alternative.
No added sugars.
No added sugars. And so for somebody who hasn't, studied biochemistry and hasn't been a nutritionist, and even for me, I get overwhelmed where I'm like, oh, I got told by this person online that this is a superfood I have to have every single day and it's going to make me feel amazing. And then you end up reading about it and someone else is like, well, actually, this is going to kill you.
Yeah.
So I just want to, give us your top 5
Tips.
things to look out for, or like when someone's navigating a supermarket or a grocery store, what are the things they should absolutely avoid on labels?
Okay, the first place I would look is in the ingredients list. So in the ingredients list, the ingredients are ordered by quantity.
Yes.
So the by percentage, right? So it might say something like wheat flour and cane sugar and
Milk, butter,
butter.
Cookie. I'm thinking
That
about
means
cookie.
that the flour is the biggest amount ingredient in the food. And so if there's sugar in the top 5 ingredients, that is dessert, whatever the food is, right?
like
if
that.
and it might not say just sugar, it might say honey, dextrose,
say
apple
fructose.
puree, fructose,
Yeah.
maltodextrin, high fructose corn syrup,
rice syrup.
syrup, molasses, and it can say so many things. If it's in the top 5 ingredients, just know that this food item is dessert.
Yes.
And treat it like dessert. Have it at the end of a meal. I don't care if on the front it says that it's bread or that it says it's a healthy yogurt.
Yeah, or that
If
it tells you it's a breakfast cereal.
Yeah.
It's a dessert cereal.
Yes.
Yeah. I eat
Another
cereal for
business
dessert.
idea.
Yeah.
Dessert cereals.
cereal.
Oh, that's so brilliant.
Cereal is my favorite dessert. I love having cereal. Cereal is my comfort food after a meal. It is my dessert.
I mean, you're the real
Cereal
glucose
anytime-
goddess.
Cereal any time of the day, though.
Love
Breakfast,
it.
lunch, dinner.
Dessert cereal. So sugar in the top 5 ingredients, it's dessert.
Okay.
Another thing to look out for is on the front of the package, if it says stuff like, as we just mentioned, gluten-free, no added sugar, high in fiber, vegan, keto, whatever. If it's trying to scream its innocence at you, it's probably not so innocent, right? So just look at the ingredients and be like, actually it says high fructose corn syrup, ingredient number 3. Those are the main 2 things. I have more in my book, but I think if you just take those 2 away, it's going to help you a little bit already.
Yeah, because, a lot of us see these buzzwords and you take them as, so it may be vegan and it may be true that it doesn't have animal products in it, but it does have sugars and bad oils and, so many ingredients that actually counteract the fact that it's vegan. It is vegan,
Cigarettes
but it's also
are
going to be
vegan.
terrible for you. Yes,
Roddy,
cigarettes are vegan.
cigarettes are vegan.
Yes, they are.
Right? So
A lot of alcohol is vegan.
Yeah, alcohol is vegan. 5 kilos of processed sugar is vegan. Vegan does not mean healthy.
No.
In the same way, gluten-free does not mean healthy.
No.
In the same way, organic doesn't mean healthy. You have to, it's great if these labels mean something to you and are important to you, but it doesn't automatically give
Mean
that
it's going
food
to be good
product
for you.
a pass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I want to talk about fertility and hormones, because one thing I've seen a rise in is women's struggles with fertility and getting pregnant, and struggles with, being able to hold space for a baby in their body and make it all the way through. And it's miscarriages, so many more miscarriages in the world. And I know you talk about in your book about, hormonal regulation linked to sugar and glucose spikes. And I think it'll be so useful. Predominant listeners and people that are part of my community are women.
Yeah.
And I think it will be really amazing for us to talk about this and really share what you know about
Let's do it. So your hormonal system is very tightly coupled with your glucose levels. They're like 2 peas in a pod.
Yeah.
And if your glucose levels are all over the place, your hormonal system is not going to be able to function properly. Specifically, let's talk about infertility and one of the most common causes of infertility in women, PCOS,
Yes.
polycystic ovarian syndrome. I think it's now 1 in 7 females has it.
is.
Yeah. So what the heck is PCOS? PCOS is sort of an umbrella term for lots of symptoms that are due to having too much testosterone, the male sex hormone, in a female body. Okay? So how do we get this high testosterone? Well, you often find that women who have PCOS also have this thing called insulin resistance. And insulin resistance happens after years and years of glucose spikes as this hormone called insulin rushes out to grab the excess glucose in your body and store it away to reduce its damaging side effects. Insulin is great, but if too much insulin is pumped out over too long, it causes insulin resistance. Right. Basically, your body is not able to respond to insulin very well anymore. And when there's too much insulin around your ovaries are told to produce more testosterone.
Oh.
Yeah. So that is, and PCOS doesn't have just this as a cause, but this is one of the most common reasons. So lots of glucose spikes, lots of insulin release, ovaries produce loads of testosterone, and all of a sudden, in a female body, you have this excess of testosterone. What does this mean? Balding on the head, hair growth on the face, missed periods, acne, all this kind of stuff. And so the way it's often treated by conventional medicine is by giving a woman the birth control pill. Why? Because the pill is female hormones. So when you give this extra boost of female hormones in the balance, the testosterone kind of evens out with the amount of female hormones. So the symptoms go away. But if you then stop the pill because you want to have a baby, then female hormones drop because you're not taking the pill and testosterone is back up. So you're like, well, shit, I'm not ovulating.
No.
Right. So what do we do to fix it? We look at our food. We avoid our glucose spikes. And this naturally can reduce testosterone levels and help you ovulate again naturally. I have so many messages from women who have PCOS who've been able to reverse it.
That is amazing.
With the hacks. Lots of babies when they were told they were never going to be able to have a baby naturally. So before you do anything else, look at your food. Because it very well could be causing this issue. I'm not saying it's going to fix everybody, but it's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, and how wonderful if you don't have to be, the less medication we have to be on, the better. And if someone is able to create a life and a small adjustments that prevent them to do that and allow them to have children if they want to, what a beautiful thing to be able to do just through changing the food that you're eating.
Because PCOS is not a disease that's like, oh, I lack enough female hormones. That's not the problem, right? The problem is the imbalance.
But they are, you know what, a lot of women, when they do have PCOS and they go to the doctor, they are told that it's something that, you go on the pill, but that doesn't mean it's going to solve it or it's going to help you get fertile. Like going on the pill doesn't allow you to get pregnant.
No,
it just
masks the symptoms.
Exactly.
But listen, that is the way that doctors are trained today. They're trained to diagnose medical condition, write prescription for medication. And they're really good at that. And we need that for so many cases. But we also need to ask ourselves, hold on a second. Why do I even have this problem in the first place? That's not something that doctors are trained to look at. And now we have so much amazing evidence that is starting to uncover the real reasons behind so many conditions. But it's not just fertility, right? It's things like eczema, psoriasis, difficult menopause symptoms, brain fog, mental health problems. I mean, there's a big shift happening.
Yeah.
Our food system is making us sick. The food landscape we live in is like, it's rough. So we need to take back control. We also need regulation on the government side, and I'm pushing for that as well. But we also need to teach people how to navigate this crazy world we live in.
And I think that's it. Teaching people how to navigate is so important because a lot of, as you were saying, whether it's the health industry or the food industry, we pretty much give away our power of our own health to so many people because we don't realize we have it in our control, like how much of it we can actually control. Oh, I feel anxious and I feel tired all the time. Oh, that just must be how my body is. And it's got nothing to do with the things that I do. It just is. I've got busy work. I'm doing this. I'm doing this.
It's genetic,
Or exactly. And I think
it's
not. And even with PCOS, we're told, okay, I have to go on the pill, but we're not really told how to solve the root issue, and we don't think it's in our hands because
doctors don't even think that it's possible, right?
No.
So even for diabetes, I have so many remissions of type 2 diabetes in my readers, and they go to their doctor. The doctor's like, what did you do?
Yeah.
They're like, well, I changed the way I was eating, and they cannot believe their eyes.
And it makes total sense. If you actually think about it, and what we were saying before, there are so many things we can add to our body externally, like the supplements and the medications and all of that. And obviously, if you need medication for a condition, that makes sense. But before we do anything, realizing that what's on our plate and the thing we fuel ourselves with the most throughout the day, how much impact, of course it has that much impact because we eat so much of it. Like there's so much going into our body by our own choice. the medication is a small part of it. The supplements are actually a small part of it.
Totally.
The majority of what we're doing is going in through our body by our choice and what we see and what we decide to fuel ourselves with. And so I think education, I love that you're pushing for that in the government and everything, because I think education is the biggest part to all of this, is just awareness, because many people don't have that from a young age. They're not reading the right books. They're not they don't have the right teachers. They're maybe not being taught it at school. And
there's so much money in the food industry, and they're pushing different messaging.
Yeah.
And they have a big budget, and they have all the celebrities, and they have the cartoons and the cereal boxes. We're
And
going
that's
up
what's hard.
against a Goliath here.
And it is hard because you're told every other day that something else is good for you. And I think that's the confusion. There is just overstimulation and an excess amount of information now, especially on social media. Experts and not experts, people who've tried stuff, haven't tried things. Everything is just so confusing that I can understand why someone would just be like, you know what, I am checking out of this. I don't want to look after my health because I have no idea what I have to do. And so these simple things where you just start reading a little bit, start changing small habits, can make all the difference.
And it's hard, my heart goes out to all the people who are trying to be healthy and they just don't know. And it's just so much information and stuff. But what I'm trying to offer is something that is rooted in the biochemistry and the physiology of your body. It's not a fad. It's kind of common sense.
Yes, that's what I love, that it's actually all backed up. I love that you put your own graphs in there too, because it's wonderful to see a personal experience. I think that helps people too. This person's actually done this and I can see it's worked for them. Let me try it for myself too. Yeah. So I want to know, is it an exception for women on their periods? Do we get like a hall pass to have as much chocolate as we want? I need to know, is that
First
acceptable?
of all, yes, always. Sometimes I wake up on a Sunday and I want chocolate ice cream for breakfast, and girl, I will have it.
But she'll have apple cider vinegar before that, okay?
Or sometimes I even won't. Sometimes I don't do the hacks.
Yeah.
I know it's crazy, but it's true. Okay, so before your period, something happens in your hormonal system, and it kind of sucks, but basically the week before your period, the same food that you would usually eat is going to create a bigger glucose spike in your body.
But we crave it the most then.
Yes. And big spike means big drop, means even more cravings. It's completely
means you're
unfair.
crying all day on the first day of your period.
It is completely unfair.
Yeah.
So what do? Before your period, make sure you're using the hacks so that you can have the stuff you're craving with less impact on your glucose levels and less creation of that roller coaster for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So have all the chocolate, but make sure you're following these hacks before
apple
that.
cider vinegar, put some clothing on the chocolate, have it as dessert instead of breakfast.
Okay.
Move afterwards.
It is crazy that we do feel those cravings so much more during that time. I guess is that to do with our hormone levels during
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
Sugar and dementia. Again, another condition that has been, dementia is just increasing so much. So what's the link between sugar and our brain and how it functions and our cognition? You said brain fog, but
well, what you're eating is affecting your brain on so many levels, short-term and long-term. And the dementia thing is really interesting. It's an emerging field of research, but some scientists are now calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes.
No way.
Yeah, because they're seeing that in the brain of somebody with Alzheimer's disease, there are actually loads of things going on that resemble type 2 diabetes. Wow. So it's insulin resistance in your brain cells, it's inflammation, it's glycation. And so we're starting to understand that maybe Alzheimer's is actually what's called a metabolic disease. So a disease that has to do with how you're burning glucose and energy in your body. And you see this quite clearly. If somebody has high glucose levels in their 30s, they're much more likely to get Alzheimer's later on.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you want to help your brain long term, try to look at your glucose levels. And there's even small studies showing that when somebody has dementia, putting them on a diet that reduces significantly how many carbs they're eating actually improves the condition. Fascinating.
It is. And I think about this a lot since I hit my 30s, that, and I keep saying this to my friends, I'm like, what we do in our 30s, how we change our diet and our lifestyle, we are going to reap the benefits or cry over the negatives in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
But even if you're 80 years old, it's not too late.
No, it's not too late.
Still change stuff.
But I am noticing that feeling of what I do now. I'm noticing like what I did in my 20s affecting my 30s. What I'm doing in my 30s is going to determine how I'm able to move, function, and live an optimal life in the future. And I think that's also a beautiful thing to feel, that what I'm doing now, it's like we talk about generations, right? What we do now, what we're doing in the world is going to impact the generations later. And that's the same. The versions of us in the future are going to thank us so much for making small changes now. But I've noticed that a lot more in my 30s. I'm like, oh, did I really have to do that in my 20s? Did I?
But also my 20s were so rough. I'm like, oh, poor Jessie in her 20s. Like
I know.
it was a tough decade, you know? You don't know what the heck you're doing. It's confusing.
It was a different era. Anxiety and sugar. Because I think that I'd say we have chronic anxiety in our generation now. Everything makes us feel anxious, and there's something about trying to prevent it, but also being in control of it. And I think sugar has such a deep impact on that we don't realize.
Well, the studies show us that if you have anxiety or depression, eating in a way that creates lots of glucose spikes will make the symptoms worse, right? It's not the only cause, but it can make it worse. And the problem is, if you're anxious, you might actually want to eat a lot of sugar to get that dopamine and feel better. So you're a little bit in a vicious cycle where the sugar is making you feel worse, but then you want more because you don't feel well. So, I mean, mental health is super multifaceted, but of course, using the hacks and giving your body and your brain that baseline of steadiness, that's how I got back to health. The glucose hacks were the foundation in the house of my health. And then I was able to layer on top of it therapy, EMDR, emotional processing, movement, et cetera, et cetera. But having that solid foundation where I felt like I was fueling my body in the best possible way, it's really gratifying.
It is.
Yeah.
And it changes your mindset to what you think you want versus what you actually need. And I've noticed that for myself where, you know, if I am craving something, I think to myself, like, how is this going to make me feel tomorrow? How is this going to make me feel in a couple of hours? And so instead, even if I'm thinking I want to go out and I want to eat this, what stops me is having had that experience of not having had it and how good it makes me feel and that muscle memory of that.
You're strong.
And so, no, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but to be able to create habits, I think you have to create a positive association to the foods that are good for you, because we're so used to thinking that healthy food is diet food.
Oh yeah.
You know, in this culture, everything, like, I feel in our culture, it's like healthy food is diet food. When you're eating healthy, it's like for a short period of time. It's like you're eating vegetables, which means you're on a diet. You're eating.
Really?
Yeah, I do think a lot of our culture does go towards that, where healthy food is seen as diet food.
Oh, that sucks.
And I think that's terrible. Yeah. And so to really create a positive association with the food that positively impacts our body, it can take training and time.
And maybe it's just a matter of learning some easy recipes that you really enjoy cooking.
Yes, exactly. Totally. Things... What have I written here? I've got so many questions for you. By the way, guys, this is such a Q&A because I had so many things to ask Jessie about everything. But I want to go straight to... I wanted to ask you, actually, what were your most surprising foods that you ended up testing that you didn't expect to be as bad as they were?
Grapes.
Yeah,
I'm not saying don't eat grapes. I'm just saying they have been humanly engineered to be little balls of sugar.
Little juicy pockets of sugar.
Yeah, and they're actually very sweet. But, you know, have grapes. They're whole fruit, they're fine. But I was pretty shocked.
Grapes.
Yeah.
Okay, these are my fast round. Okay, we're going to go through and you can have one word or a sentence for this answer. Have you seen the craze of freezing bread?
I think I started it.
Oh, you started it. Okay,
Yeah.
Great. So is it true? Freezing bread does what?
Okay, so when you cook a starch and then you cool it down or you freeze it, some of the starch in there is going to turn to fiber. It's going to turn to what's called resistant starch. And then if you warm it back up, you can eat that carb with less impact on your glucose because some of it has become fiber. Now, don't do this all the time. It's just cool scientifically. Don't become obsessed with freezing your starches. But I saw this article come out. I was like, I think you could trace this back to an Instagram post of mine from about a year ago where I talked about this.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, have you heard of it? She's like, girl, I started it. Okay. I have not heard of it. I started it. Best bread to consume, the best bread to consume for us.
Rye bread or sourdough?
Oh, sourdough.
Yeah, so good. Do you bake your own bread?
You know what? This year, one of my goals was to do a whole bread series where I'm just experimenting with breads. So next time you come over, I'll have a fresh bread in the oven for you.
Great.
But not a bun in my oven, just a bun in the other oven. Oats. I'm just going to say one word. You have to tell me your reaction. Oats.
That's my reaction.
Oh, it's the best thing. The porridge and oatmeal and granola, all those things
Listen,
were told are so good for us.
They're fine. Just
with
have
some
them
Greek
for
yogurt.
taste. Yeah, they're there for taste.
They're there for taste.
That's what should have been the word, for taste.
For taste. Best milk options. Like what would you recommend?
Unsweetened nut milk or whole milk.
Best and worst grain to consume, if there is one.
I think they're all the same.
All great. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Calorie counting.
Stupid.
Okay. Best, okay, for people who do want to snack between their meals, because, sometimes people do get hungry and they want a little snack. Best, your top 3 snack options.
Banana with almond butter.
Oh, banana.
Yeah. A toast with some avocado, soft-boiled egg with sea salt. Anything kind of savory-ish, not too sweet. The fruit is okay if you're putting some clothing on it, like the nut butter.
Sweeteners or unrefined sugars, like coconut sugar, jaggery, maple syrup, all those sugars, are they all the same?
Yes, they're all the same. I'm sorry. Yeah, maple syrup, agave, white sugar, brown sugar, they're just the same molecules. It's just marketing. Yeah. So it's not because a cake says, made with coconut sugar. It's bullshit, girl. It's bullshit. It's all the same.
Gosh.
I know.
You can use, so instead of coconut sugar in my recipes, you can just use white sugar.
Yes,
okay?
you can.
Don't spend the money.
But if it makes you feel more fancy, it's just sugar. So have the one you like.
Okay. Have the one you like.
Yeah, have the one you like.
Okay, this is a good one. French fries or jacket potato, because if you think about coating your carbs, you coat them and you deep fry them. Does it make it better for your glucose spike?
No, because the deep frying actually creates trans fats, which are really bad for you.
Oh, damn. I was really counting on
but
that
one. But that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's
right?
a good one, yeah.
Brown rice or white rice?
Whatever you want.
Oh,
It's
both the same?
Yeah.
There is so much out there about the brown rice and fiber?
There's like 1% more fiber. It doesn't make a difference. You know what makes it fiber? Add some broccoli in there.
Smoothie or milkshake?
Ooh.
Because I know what you say. Fruit smoothie. I should say fruit smoothie or milkshake. Fruit smoothie or a McDonald's milkshake.
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay. Well, oh God.
I know.
Maybe. Okay, I'm gonna be like really controversial and say milkshake.
To know why, you're gonna have to read her book, but that is controversial. But I knew you would say that. Orange juice or Coke?
What kind of Coke?
Normal Coke.
Whatever you want. Same.
Oh my God! See,
if you had said
Shocking.
orange juice or Diet Coke, I would have said Diet Coke.
But orange juice and Coke, yeah, orange
Same.
juice.
Yeah. I mean, you could, it's the same amount of sugar. You could say, the orange juice has some vitamins, but honestly, it's like very little increase. But orange juice versus Diet Coke, Diet Coke.
Gosh,
I know. I know, guys, it's crazy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roddy, for having me. Such a joy.
Thank you for letting me bombard you with all the questions that I had. And I really hope that this helps people. And I know it will. I mean, reading the book has changed my life and many people's in my life. And I hope that this does the same for you in so many different ways. And if it does, please message Jessie and tell her all the wonderful things that you have felt, like I did. I sent her a voice note. I was like, I just love your book. I just binge read it, and I love you. So thank you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. I'm so excited for whatever your book 3 ends up being, and whatever else you have coming out in your life.
Thanks,
and thank you for coming on here.
Thank you so much for having me.